Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. Been an interesting time, hasn't it? You know, after checking out the stuff at SHOT Show and just kind of looking around to see what we could talk about on New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union about guns, politics, state of the world. Maybe I just needed a little bit of a break is what I basically did. What'd I find out? Well, we're doing okay in New Mexico. House Bill 137 is still went through its last committee meeting, and it actually said do not pass with these amendments. If you read the amendments and the new material and the new bill that they're proposing, still sucks because it's very specific as what it's trying to go after as far as gas-operated guns. They get so in the weeds that you're really going to be hard-pressed to use technicalities to get out of something with this particular bill. But what was more interesting and more telling is that if you look at the penalties for violating this unjust bill, House Bill 137, if you don't know, basically bans all semi-automatic gas-operated guns. And they get so in the weeds with gas-operated that they talk about how the mechanisms themselves work. So this had to be authored with a lot of turncoat help. People that actually knew some technical stuff about firearms, or maybe they actually did their own research, but it looks like it's very well thought out as what specifically they're going after. So the other thing I noticed is that I don't remember in the original text of House Bill 137 that they would actually say that you had to have a list of semi-automatic firearms or gas-operated firearms is what this bill's actually really focusing on. That the Attorney General has to put on there, put on a website that's available and make it available to every citizen in New Mexico. What's interesting about that is they give them until September of this year to have that ready, and that they can certify the ownership of a gun 100% by that time frame. So that, to me, seems a little bit of a stretch. Being a former IT guy, still an IT guy, seeing how you get different systems going from start to finish, even if they got something that was on the shelf to do this type of thing, not saying that there is something like that. I've never heard of anything like that, where they could register every firearm if we willingly did so. As a citizen of New Mexico, you went in and you registered your gun like you're supposed to do in Illinois. And then them to trace it back to its point of origin, basically, to you, and give that information in real time by September of 2024 seems like a huge, giant leap of faith as far as technology goes. The other thing that I saw in this is that they reduced the penalties, and I may have said something about that, but they made this, instead of if you violate one of these, you own one of these guns, you don't register or whatever, unless you're committing a felony with the gun, it's a misdemeanor. So this isn't even that big of a deal. It's more so bluster, like I said before, because if you do get it, it's a misdemeanor in the state of New Mexico. You're not going to jail. You're going to be able to bond out. You're going to be able to, if it was a felony, you still probably could do that because our bail system is messed up in New Mexico. Speaking of which, I got to help, talk to, I'm not going to say help. I got to talk to Shane Ferrari, the sheriff of San Juan County. And, I got to iron out some things. One thing he enlightened me of, and I didn't know this, is that state PD has co-jurisdiction with the sheriff's departments throughout the state. That means that, as much as I was a real kind of hard ass on Shane specifically and San Juan County sheriffs for not being able to just kick the state PD the hell out of the county, you can if they have the same jurisdiction as you. So you kind of can't do that, and I just had a good conversation with Shane. We talked about guns. We talked about the Second Amendment. That's one thing I can honestly say that Shane is 100% behind, he's also one of those guys that's a pure constitutionalist, and he's for the people. And he's a very personable person. I've known him for a very long time. So being able to talk to him for a little bit was just me getting to talk to a friend, an old friend, but also to get a little bit more. I have not had that opportunity to approach Shane on a one-on-one environment, because he's usually, every time I've run into him, he's been in public settings and there's a lot of people around him, and some of these conversations I don't want to throw out there because I know he's already been beat up about it. A lot of politicians have been, especially in this area, and as much as I have to use that word with Shane being the sheriff and that they're elected officials in San Juan County, he's not a politician. He has to play politics because anyone that gets in that has to do that for budgetary reasons and to kind of, we're already the black sheep, Northwest New Mexico is, of our state. And if we just continue to blacken their eye, they end up retaliating because that's what our governors like in New Mexico. So that's what's going on in New Mexico. There was a rally that was held Saturday. I have not seen any pictures from it. I personally didn't get a chance to go down there because I had some side work I was going to do that popped up at the last minute, and I could actually use the extra cash. So seeing what's been going on in committee, seeing that they've bounced this bill, the one that I'm really concerned about. The one that is less concerning is the 7-day wait on guns. And I say less concerned. It's still an infringement. It shouldn't happen. We've had it in the past, though. And when I say we've had it in the past, I remember very clearly when I first was old enough and had enough cash. That's a big thing when you're coming up in the world. And buying a gun and having to wait for 7 days for them to do their stuff that they did for their background check. Now, I'm 99% sure this was also found unconstitutional, and that's why they were forced to implement the near instant background check with NICS, because there was a lot of politicking happening where people were calling up people and saying, hey, hold this application up for this type of person, and people weren't getting through there. And there was court cases that got all the way up to the Supreme Court, I believe, because this was a big deal that went when it went away, when the 7-day waiting period went away in New Mexico, because it was, honestly, I believe it had something to do with the NRA getting really involved at the time and saying the NICS background check shouldn't take 7 days. It should be instant. So they upgraded the systems to do that. And there was enough push in legislation at the House and at the Senate at the national level that got done. So I'm not so sure why New Mexico is trying to go backwards in time. I also don't understand the whole any minor 18-year-old, that's what they're calling it, which is funny because the stats that they use for shootings now include what they're considering adults that can't buy firearms. So this doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But an 18-year-old who we can send off to combat is what New Mexico is trying to stop from being able to buy a firearm until they're 21. Now, I have multiple issues with that. Specifically, if we're going to send anyone to fight and die for our country, give them a machine gun in their hand, why can't they own any firearm they want? I'm from that variety of constitutionalist, I would say idealist nowadays, that you should absolutely be able to carry whatever you want and use whatever tool is necessary or you deem necessary to keep your family and your person safe. That's just how New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union always has operated. Those are the big things that are going through the roundhouse for us to be of concern, other than they're still fighting over surplus that they have. And again, I knew that would probably take up most of this session. So until everybody gets their piece of the pie, this stuff that we're worried about is a concern. It's something we need to watch. But as long as we can drag its feet and make it suck for those people to even consider passing, it won't pass. Nationally, the other thing that's cool is California has found that, well, Judge Bonta, the guy that we actually like because he seems to just keep knocking it out of the park for the 2A guys, but background checks for ammunition were found unconstitutional there. Now, that has a lot of repercussions because there's a lot of rumblings at the national level with this type of thing and this type of ammunition licensing. Because, again, if you can take away the batteries for the toy goes away, right? Same thing with ammunition for people to hunt and shoot with, you know? The Second Amendment isn't always about hunting. Well, it isn't about hunting. It's about protecting yourself. And that's what we're missing, I think, in our daily conversations, is that these people, the people, our opposition, that is, they don't think about things like we do. You know, they only care about pure power. And anyone that can check that power is a bad person. And that's not really the case, and we know it. Like, share, subscribe. Most importantly, be great.